Welcome to Eternal Love Diaries, where real stories change real lives. Every love carries a story. And here, each one is told from the heart. Today's story follows Noah, a 38-year-old widowed architect raising his teenage son alone in a coastal Oregon town. After losing his wife 3 years ago, Noah's life revolves around his work and being there for his son, with little room for anything else. When a hurricane forces a stranded traveler named Eliza to seek shelter in his home for what should be just one night, neither expects how quickly their lives will intertwine. As the storm outside rages and the one inside Noah's heart begins to calm, he faces an impossible choice: remain safely anchored to his past or risk everything for a future he never imagined. What happens when a temporary guest awakens permanent feelings? And can a heart that's been closed for years find the courage to open again? "I don't need your charity," she said, standing drenched on my porch at 2 a.m., the hurricane howling behind her like a living thing. Her car had slid off the coastal highway just a mile from my house, and somehow she'd found her way to my door. I should have just pointed her to the guest room and gone back to sleep. Instead, I heard myself say, "It's not charity. It's basic human decency." Little did I know those words would change everything. My name is Noah Mitchell, and for 3 years since losing my wife, I'd convinced myself that my life was complete enough with just my son and my work. I was wrong. The power went out minutes after I let her in. In the glow of emergency candles, Eliza Winters looked less like a drowned rat and more like a painting, all sharp angles and soft shadows. "I'm really sorry about this," she said, wrapping herself in the towel I'd given her. "I was supposed to be in Portland by now, but the storm." Her voice trailed off as thunder cracked overhead, making the windows rattle. My son Tyler, 16 and usually sullen, appeared in the hallway, surprisingly alert for 2 a.m. "Is everything okay, Dad?" he asked, eyeing our unexpected guest with teenage suspicion. The next morning, roads were flooded, power lines down. The radio announced that coastal highways would remain closed for at least 3 days. I found Eliza in my kitchen, somehow having located coffee and managing to brew it over the gas stove. "I called the rental car company," she said without preamble. "They can't get a tow truck out here until the road's clear." She looked up at me, her green eyes direct. "I can try to find a hotel in town if this is too inconvenient." The words that came out of my mouth surprised even me. "The town's probably evacuated. You might as well stay." Tyler was less than thrilled with our houseguest. "So she's just going to live here now," he muttered as we tried to salvage the food in our powerless refrigerator. I gave him my best dad glare. "It's 3 days, Ty. We can be decent humans for 3 days." But something in his scowl told me this wasn't just about inconvenience. Later, I found him staring at the family photo on the mantel, the last one taken before his mother got sick. "Mom would have done the same thing," I said quietly, joining him. He nodded, but didn't look at me. "Yeah, but Mom's not here." Eliza, it turned out, was a marine biologist on her way to a research position in Portland. As the storm raged outside, she somehow coaxed Tyler into a conversation about ocean conservation that lasted hours. I watched from the doorway as my son, who barely spoke 3 sentences to me most days, animated and engaged with this stranger. "He's brilliant," she told me later as we sat by candlelight after Tyler went to bed. "You've done an amazing job with him." The compliment hit me like a physical force. "His mother did the amazing part," I said automatically. Eliza's eyes held mine. "Don't sell yourself short, Noah. Single parenting isn't for the faint of heart." By day 2, we'd fallen into a strange rhythm. Eliza taught us how to play poker using seashells Tyler had collected as a child. We cooked canned soup over camping stoves and told ghost stories as rain lashed the windows. For the first time in 3 years, laughter echoed through rooms that had grown too accustomed to silence. That night, after Tyler went to bed, Eliza and I sat on the porch watching the storm begin to weaken. "Tell me about her," she said softly. No one had asked me that in years, they were all too afraid of my grief. So I told her about Claire, her laugh, her terrible cooking, how she could name every constellation in the sky. "She sounds wonderful," Eliza said when I finally fell silent. There were tears in her eyes, not pity, but genuine emotion. She was, I agreed, surprised to find that the usual knife twist of pain was duller now. "What about you? Anyone waiting in Portland?" The question felt dangerous somehow. Eliza shook her head. "My last relationship ended badly. He wanted certainty, stability. I wanted adventure, I guess. The unknown." She gestured to the storm. "Though perhaps a little less adventure than this." Our laughter mingled with the sound of rain, and something shifted between us, something neither of us was ready to name. The morning of day 3 brought sunshine and the distant sound of cleanup crews. "Looks like they'll have the roads cleared by tomorrow," I said, checking my phone as service returned. Eliza nodded, a strange expression crossing her face. "Back to real life," she said, attempting a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Tyler, overhearing, slammed his bedroom door. I found him sitting on his bed, furiously sketching, something he hadn't done since Claire died. "She's leaving, isn't she?" he asked without looking up. I sat beside him, choosing my words carefully. "She has a job waiting, Ty. A life." He finally met my eyes. "We have a life too, Dad. Just not much of one." That evening, I found Eliza packing her small overnight bag. "Tyler's going to miss you," I said, leaning against the doorframe. She folded a sweater with precise movements. "Just Tyler?" The question hung between us, heavy with possibility. I'd spent 3 years building walls around what remained of my heart, and somehow this woman had found every crack in my defenses. "I'm not very good at this," I admitted. "At what?" she asked, setting down the sweater. "At beginning again," I said. "At taking chances." Eliza crossed the room until she stood directly before me. "Neither am I. But I'm starting to think some chances are worth taking." Dinner that night was a quiet affair, the impending departure hanging over us. Tyler, surprisingly, broke the silence. "You should come back sometime," he said to Eliza. "When the weather's better. I could show you the tide pools." The simple invitation, coming from my guarded son, nearly undid me. Eliza's smile was gentle. "I'd like that very much, Tyler." After he went to bed, Eliza and I sat on the couch, the distance between us both infinite and microscopic. "I don't know how to do this," I confessed. "It's been so long, and you live hours away, and," she placed her hand over mine. "We could figure it out. If you wanted to." That night, I couldn't sleep. The guest room door was ajar, and I could see Eliza sitting by the window, watching the now calm sea. I stood in the hallway, paralyzed by indecision. Claire had been my only love, my entire adult life. The thought of opening myself to someone new felt like betrayal. Yet something pulled me toward that half-open door, toward possibility. Eliza looked up, sensing my presence. "Can't sleep either?" she asked. I shook my head. "Too many thoughts." She patted the window seat beside her. "Want to share them?" I sat, careful to maintain distance. "I keep thinking about tomorrow. About you leaving." "It doesn't have to be goodbye," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Portland's only 3 hours away." The moonlight silvered her profile, and suddenly I was terrified, not of moving forward, but of stepping back into the half-life I'd been living. "What if we try and it doesn't work?" I asked. "What if it hurts Tyler?" Eliza turned to face me fully. "What if it does work? What if it heals all of us?" She hesitated, then asked the question that would change everything: "Is there space for someone new in your life, Noah?" The words came before I could overthink them: "Only if you're looking for a permanent space." Morning came too quickly. Tyler helped Eliza load her small bag into her rental car, which had been delivered at dawn. "You promised about the tide pools," he reminded her, his voice trying for casual but missing by miles. She hugged him, and over his shoulder, her eyes met mine. "I always keep my promises, Tyler." When he went inside, we stood awkwardly by her car. "So," she said. 3 hours isn't so far." I nodded, suddenly unable to find words. "I have your number," she continued. "And you have mine." The moment stretched, filled with everything unsaid. Then, before I could overthink it, I stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't a perfect kiss, nothing like the movies. It was hesitant, a question more than a statement. When we pulled apart, Eliza's eyes were wide. "I wasn't sure," she admitted. "If you were ready." I wasn't sure either, but standing there in my driveway, the morning sun warming my face, I felt something I hadn't in years: hope. "I'm not," I confessed. "Not completely. But I'd like to get there. With you." She smiled then, brilliant and real. "I'd like that too." As she drove away, I didn't feel the familiar panic of loss. Instead, I felt the strange, forgotten sensation of anticipation. 2 weeks later, Eliza drove back for the weekend. Tyler, who had been counting down the days, took her to his secret tide pools. I watched from a distance as they crouched over marine treasures, my son animated in a way I hadn't seen in years. That night, after Tyler went to bed, Eliza and I sat on the porch swing. "He's healing," she observed. "So are you." I took her hand, still marveling at how natural it felt. "We both needed someone who understood loss without being defined by it," I said. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Is that what I am to you? Someone who understands loss?" The question deserved honesty. "At first, maybe," I admitted. "But now you're someone who helps me remember what it feels like to look forward instead of back." Eliza's hand tightened in mine. "I was running when I came here," she confessed. "Taking that job in Portland, leaving everything behind. I thought adventure meant never staying still." She looked up at me, her expression open and vulnerable. "I never expected to find something worth stopping for." That night, as we said goodbye at her door, the kiss we shared wasn't a question anymore. It was a promise. Over the next months, our lives intertwined in ways I never imagined possible. Eliza drove down every other weekend. On alternate weekends, Tyler and I drove to Portland, exploring the city through her eyes. We talked daily, sharing the small moments that make up a life. When Tyler's science fair project on marine conservation won first place, Eliza was there cheering beside me. When her research paper was published, we celebrated with a picnic on the beach. Slowly, carefully, we built something new, not replacing what was lost, but creating space for joy alongside grief. 6 months after the hurricane, I stood in my bedroom, staring at Claire's side of the closet, still untouched after all this time. With trembling hands, I began to sort through her clothes, carefully placing each item in donation boxes. Tyler found me there, surrounded by memories. Instead of anger, his face showed understanding beyond his years. "Mom would want this," he said quietly, picking up one of her favorite sweaters. "She'd like Eliza." Tears blurred my vision as I hugged my son. "How did you get so wise?" I asked. He shrugged against my chest. "I had good teachers." That weekend, when Eliza arrived, I showed her the cleared space in my closet. She understood immediately what it meant. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice gentle. I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. Later that night, as we lay talking in the darkness, she asked the question that had been building between us: "Is there space in your bed for me tonight?" I took her hand and placed it over my heart. "Only if you're looking for a space in my life," I replied. Her answer was a kiss that tasted of salt and new beginnings. 1 year after the hurricane that brought her to my door, I asked Eliza to marry me. We stood on the same beach where her car had slid off the road, now peaceful under summer stars. Tyler was our only witness, grinning as he filmed the moment on his phone. "You crashed into our lives," I told her as I knelt in the sand. "And somehow, instead of destruction, you brought reconstruction." When she said yes, Tyler was the first to embrace her, whispering something in her ear that made her eyes fill with tears. Later, she told me what he'd said: "Thank you for bringing my dad back to life." Today, as I watch Eliza and Tyler planting a garden in what was once Claire's neglected flower bed, I understand that love isn't a limited resource. It expands to fill the spaces we create for it. Claire will always be part of our story, the foundation upon which we've built this new chapter. But Eliza is our present and our future, the unexpected gift that came with a storm. Sometimes the most powerful forces of nature aren't the ones that tear things apart, but the ones that bring them together in ways we never could have imagined. We'd love to know, which country are you watching from? Drop a comment below. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you believe in second chances, show your support by hitting the like button. Subscribe to Eternal Love Diaries for more stories that touch the heart and change perspectives. From Newport, Oregon, United States, this is a reminder that sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come disguised as endings, and that there is always, always room in our hearts for new love if we're brave enough to open the door.